This story is quite frankly astonishing. Australia's Minister for National and Cybersecurity, the appropriately named Tony Burke, has been outed as driving a mobile spying device, a Chinese EV. As I've said on so many occasions in the past, net zero and the insane policies that go with it trump everything. And now it seems they also trump national security concerns. So desperate was Burke to signal his ridiculous green virtue that despite being in the top national security role in the government, that is, Minister for Home Affairs, member of the National Security Committee and Minister for Cybersecurity, he decides to drive around in a car made in the country from which originate more cyber attacks on Australia than any other. What are the chances this car is tracking everywhere he goes, recording all the conversations that take place, even videoing inside and outside, including in sensitive locations? Only someone completely blinded by net zero and green ideology could possibly be so stupid. Welcome back to MGUY, British engineer and lawyer, now Sydney-based YouTuber. Be sure to follow me on the usual socials for more content, links in the description, and please make sure you're subscribed and have enabled all notifications so you don't miss out on any future videos. And if you'd like to support this channel, why not buy me a coffee? Click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen. Senator James Paterson does a brilliant job of taking this outrageous security oversight to pieces. He firstly sets it all up by asking about the risks of connected vehicles.
There's been media reports about the ability of some of these vehicles to listen in to conversations that occur in the vehicle because they have audio recording. Is that one of the risks?
Certainly is, and I think Choice also did a study of the range of vehicles in Australia and the data that is acquired, and we obviously are looking at connected vehicles more generally as well.
And some of these vehicles have external cameras and collect video footage of where they travel. Is that a relevant risk?
It could be, yes.
Including random passers-by or sensitive facilities or sensitive locations?
It could be, yes.
And then after all that setup, which does go on for quite a bit longer, we get the killer blow.
For obvious reasons, I won't name the make and model in this forum, but I've been told that the minister, at least previously, as his personal vehicle, drives a Chinese electric vehicle. Does the department have any knowledge of that?
I think that's a matter for the minister.
Well, we just talked before about the national security risks posed by these vehicles. Perhaps the minister's made different arrangements. Perhaps the information given to me is not correct. But you said that some of the risks that these vehicles pose is that they can record the audio of the occupants who are driving around. Wouldn't it be of concern if the minister's driving around in a listening device?
Well, I think there's a few assumptions in there that aren't necessarily borne out.
Well, if I can be corrected, I welcome that. If at any point the minister has driven or owned a Chinese-made EV.
I'll see what information I can get for you.
Okay, I look forward to that.
It's so brilliant because they know the answer, but they're just avoiding saying it. And eventually the answer comes back.
Immediately on being appointed to this portfolio, Minister Burke informed his department and security agencies that he had a Chinese-made vehicle. He was given advice on the appropriate precautions to take and has taken those precautions.
Okay, that invites some follow-up questions, Chair. I'm sorry, I was ready to move on to outcome 2, but I think we have to persist with this for a moment. What vehicle does the minister drive?
I'd have to take that on notice. I don't have those details.
What mitigations has the minister taken to protect himself and the Commonwealth from the security risks of driving a Chinese-made EV?
Again, I'll take that on notice, but repeat the point that he has taken the precautions that he was advised to take by his department and security agencies.
Does that include not plugging his phone into the vehicle?
Again, that level of detail I'd need to take on notice.
Does that include not driving the vehicle to any sensitive locations?
I'll take that on notice.
We just heard from Mr Hansford earlier the large number of national security and cybersecurity risks posed by these vehicles, including that they can listen to the occupants, that they can film people outside the vehicle where the vehicle is travelling, that it can track where the vehicle is travelling, that it's a risk to a mobile phone that is plugged into the vehicle. Is it really appropriate for the Ministers for Home Affairs and Cybersecurity to be driving a Chinese-made connected electric vehicle?
Well, again, immediately on being appointed to this role, the Minister sought advice from his department and security agencies, and he has taken the precautions that he was advised to take.
Yeah, of course. They would be perfectly fine with that. Yeah, absolutely.
I'd rather hear that from them than from you. But just to be clear, our closest national security partner and ally, the United States, regards the national security threat posed by these vehicles as so grave they've effectively banned or proposed to effectively ban the importation of these vehicles into the United States for use by anyone, let alone a minister in a national security portfolio. Are there seriously mitigations that can remove this risk?
Well, it would seem, according to security agencies, the answer is yes.
What's the most amazing thing about this clip? The fact that they defend the decision for him to drive a Chinese spying device, justifying it on the advice they received instead of avoiding such blatant risks to national security. Senator Patterson then grills Senator Murray Watt on how he ended up with this EV as they're not on the fleet options.
How many other members of the Albanese cabinet are driving Chinese-made EVs?
I'd have to take that on notice, and I'd question whether this is even the portfolio to ask that question.
Well, you'd be pleased to know it is, because the Department of Home Affairs recently became responsible for tracking Australian government exposure across the board to connected technologies like these.
The point I'm making is that the government fleet is owned by, serviced by, whatever the correct word would be, by a different department, and they would be the department that would have the sorts of records that you're seeking about the make and model of every minister's vehicle.
I have checked this. It's the Department of Finance. There are no Chinese-made EVs available on the list of cars offered to members and senators through the lease process. So has Minister Burke gone outside the Department of Finance process to arrange his own private vehicle because it wasn't available on the list?
I think there's several leaps of logic in that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if what you're saying is correct, then what we're talking about here is Minister Burke's private vehicle rather than a fleet vehicle. I'm not saying that's correct. That's what you're implying. But again, I'd need to get details of any of that before I can
Why do you
properly
think
answer.
no Chinese EVs are made available through the fleet process?
I'm not going to speculate about...
I wonder why that would be. But hey, it's net zero in EVs, so the consequences don't matter, as long as it looks good, right? This is scandalous. How any minister in the Australian government could even consider buying and driving a car manufactured in the country that is responsible for more cyber attacks globally, ahead of Russia and Iran, and which has the capability to listen, watch and track movements is beyond comprehension. That's why so many government vehicles used to be Aussie-made Holdens and latterly European and Japanese cars, rather than importing cars from a country that poses a significant risk to our national security. In the past, this would have been a resignation issue. For the Minister for Cybersecurity, of all things, to be driving a Chinese EV is such an egregious breach of security that he should rightly fall on his sword. But those days of ministers having integrity and doing the right thing have long gone. Just like Chris Bowen has demonstrated his idiocy by destroying our electricity grid and our landscape to appease the net zero gods, so the Minister for Cybersecurity has shown himself to be a right Burke.